The cost of fuel is going up at the pumps. If you've bought petrol, diesel, and LPG recently, you would have noticed that you're paying more for what you buy. There is a significant concern tonight, not only from consumers, but from the retailers themselves. The OMCs are complaining, the LPG marketers are complaining. And as you know, tomorrow is a crucial day because the driver unions, the transport unions are all going to come together for a very important meeting with the Transport Ministry and the Road Coordinating Council to decide on new fares. Already, it sparked a fair bit of controversy. The Transport Ministry, we've seen, has asked the police to step in to watch out for drivers who are charging unapproved fares. As we've heard tonight from the Concerned Drivers Association, they really do not care a hoot. They're going ahead to charge the new prices, the new fares, even before tomorrow's meeting. But why is that? It's because of what we are beginning to see now in the price build-up, but also the constant increase in the price of fuel at the pumps. And there's a prediction that before the year ends, you'll possibly be buying petrol at the pump for 17 cedis a litre. But what about LPG, which is meant for the poor? We're going to be delving into that. After the break, my guest will join me. And I get to also show you the picture as we speak and the latest addition of $80 to the cost of LPG, which is generating a fair bit of controversy too. We have the NPA for a conversation. What really is happening? So yes, we're talking about the subject of fuel prices, and we're seeing a fair bit of added taxes and levies, etc., being put on. One that is generating controversy tonight, the fresh one. It's this $80 per metric ton that has been put on LPGs. And we've seen two statements from the OMCs and from the LPG Marketers Association, both going to the NPA, raising objections about this. But what is this really for? It's a question that when we sit, we ask the question. We now know that bottling plants, from what the LPG Marketers Association in their letter to the NPA says, if you break this down, we'll possibly get $44 of this. And then you have cylinder investment margin of $36. Now, in monetary terms, you're talking about 1.2 cedis more. That's 1 cedi, 2 pesos more added to LPG that you buy. How much of a difference will this make? If you're buying a lot more, it begins to bite very hard. Now, if you look at this data from the NPA, it tells you that the cost of LPG has gone up quite significantly already. Of course, this is a liberalized market. You possibly will get, on the higher end of things, 16 cedis, 67 pesos. So that's quite expensive. If you comb town properly, you may get the lowest price at 13 cedis, 96 pesos. This is according to the NPA. But considering what the policy was when LPG was focused on by the government, many look at this and say it is a reason why when you look at the trend when it comes to LPG consumption, you see that we began to see a certain climb in terms of consumption, but then we saw this significant drop in consumption in 2021. Now, the explanation for the LPG marketers is that this constant increase in the price of LPG is gradually eroding the gains that the government had made when they introduced this policy to introduce more of us to LPG, move the poor away from firewood, destroying the environment and cutting down trees. So you see this drop there, significant drop in 2022. It is beginning to climb up, but it's never come back to what it used to be, right, in terms of the climb. That is a worrying sign for those who back the policy. What was the policy? The policy was that by 2030, the aim was to have at least 50% of us all using LPG. And it was a very important purpose that this was put in place. A clear, deliberate policy. And pricing is central to that. If it costs too much, people wouldn't use it. If it's a poor man's fuel, then you better make it inexpensive and affordable for them. So why are we having this additional cost introduced to LPG pricing? And we'll be speaking to the NPA to get some clarity for you, because all of us use LPG in our houses. Even now, those in the villages use it even more. But the implication of this in terms of the price build-up and the increase in cost is obvious. There are two ways to look at this. If you look at the demand is going to drop, right, which is what we're beginning to see with the trend and the dip in consumption. And then that obviously people will look at substitutes. What substitutes can they get? They will go and cut the trees in the forest. And you know what that means? Now there are sanctions globally for countries that destroy the environment. And this has implications for us. At the time that we're doing carbon trading, and there's a lot of money that we can get if we keep our forests intact. You don't want this, where people are looking for substitutes and cutting your trees. So that is an important point to look at. What that will mean eventually in red is that the government policy itself will fail and there'll be catastrophic consequences for us. In the current global climate we have right now, there's less tolerance for a country, for example, like Ghana, that destroys its environment. So there are real consequences for this for the environment if you look at this particular track of consequence. And then you look at this track of consequence, the cost of production for those who use LPG to produce stuff, it was going to go up. What it means is that it's going to pass it on for you and for myself. So that is the LPG story there. And this is a poor man's fuel, I insist. And we want to focus on that first. Then there is a fuel that I use and everybody else uses. I'm talking about petrol. I'm talking about diesel. And now if you throw in the conversation around doom, so for those who already have generators, they're spending an extra amount of money now to fill their tanks so that when the power goes off, they can put that on. So that's an extra burden for businesses like us. What you see right now is because the power is running. If the power goes off, we need to buy diesel for our plants. We're seeing that the additional cost that was brought back on when the price stabilization recovery levy was first withdrawn and then reintroduced, has added a bit more to it. Then you look at the introduction of the price floor, which has been criticized by some, but the players in the industry, BDCs, for example, are happy with it. But their critics say if you have a price floor below which prices shouldn't drop, obviously, if somebody can drop their prices below that floor, you're saying that it shouldn't, although that will benefit myself and the ordinary person. So these policies have thrown up a few questions for fuel, kerosene, for petrol, for diesel. There are 12 tax components on this and look at the price buildup. That is quite a lot, and it's been a main subject for a lot of people over the years, right? In total, you're talking about 13 cedi, 11 pesos per liter, three cedis, 11 pesos per liter. If you put all that together, that's what you're paying when you go to the pump. You probably noticed this, including sanitation pollution levy. And that was introduced some time back, and many have asked, why is it still there? Our streets are still very, very dirty. Sanitation hasn't really improved. And so why is it still there? We're not seeing the correspondence between this tax and this levy and what we see on our streets. And then you have the energy sector recovery levy. And if that is there, why is the IMF telling us that our ability to make the recoveries and the debt isn't reducing as much as we wanted it to? So that, in essence, is what we are looking at. Today, prices have gone up again at the pumps. If you go to petrol, for example, some are already selling at the 14 cedis, 99 pesos at the pumps. Diesel has gone up also by 14 cedis, 80 pesos. And my question really is, how come petrol, for a long time, it's always been below diesel, but now we are seeing that go over diesel for petrol. That's what we're seeing today in terms of the price that have already gone up. And there's a prediction by COPEC that if this is not managed, we are going to see prices hit 17 cedis a liter before the end of the year. But why is that prediction up for us to consider? Is also because of the challenges that we are seeing with the depreciating cedi. Currently, $1 is giving us 13 cedi 6 pesos, right? That's quite a bit of a depreciation, 9.65% depreciation from the beginning of the year. That is not good, because that is going to mean that the prices of the products will go up, because, as you know, the BDCs will have to take the cedis that is depreciating, go and buy the dollars, and so they can bring the product into the market. There's a reason why we're seeing that significant, one of the reasons, by the way, that we're seeing the hike. IMF is already warning us that, looking at what is happening in the Middle East right now with the Israeli-Hamas war, that could also throw in a fair bit of complications in there that could send the global crude prices going up. If that happens, you throw in there the toxic mix of depreciation to it, and all these margins I'm talking about, Ghana is going to take a significant hit. And no wonder the prediction we've had that we could possibly see 17 cedis a litre before the end of the year. If that happens, and is the reason why tomorrow there's a meeting, the consequences is dire for an economy like ours, because you see the increases in fuel prices immediately affecting transport fares. We may see that tomorrow, confirmed. If that happens, goods will also be affected. That woman bringing in the maize and the plantain from the farms up north, for example, will be paying more because the transport operator would have increased the price. And when it gets to the market, it's going to cost a bit more. Food prices will go up. KK prices will go up as well. It affects every single individual. You understand why the Transport Ministry issued a statement asking the police to be on the lookout for drivers charging on approved fares because of its impact on the ordinary people once the transport fares go up in response to the increasing fuel prices. And it's to that subject I go first before I bring in the LPG Marketers Association and the MPA for a conversation. Because joining me now is Samuel Amoah. He's a deputy spokesperson for the Ghana Private Road Transport Union. They are meeting tomorrow for a very important meeting to make a decision. And Ms. Amoah, I want to ask you, ahead of tomorrow, what are your own expectations? We know that some of the drivers have begun charging the new fares already. What's your own expectation ahead of this very important meeting that we expect would decide new fares for us all?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And let me use this opportunity to say good evening to all your viewers out there. Yes, tomorrow, there's going to be a meeting with the transport ministries. We started this meeting from last Wednesday. We met, and the meeting was adjourned to that will be tomorrow. And it's all about transport fare increment. You know, if I'll take you back a little bit, in January, the leadership came up with an increment of 20%, of which the ministry also came out that we did not use the right procedure to increase the fares. And so therefore, we should come, of which we went, we put everything on paper, and that 20% negotiation started way back from January. Even by then, where the fuel price wasn't up to where it is now, the 20% that we came up with, we considered the cost of spare parts, the cost of lubricant, and that of the taxes, insurance and DVLA taxes. Those are the major components that we used, we focused on before we came up with the 20%. Now, when the fuel price came up again, if we check last Wednesday, there was an increment. Another day, that is the Thursday, there was an increment again, and even today. So we are not looking at this 20% again because of where the fuel price is also running. So we were, looking at around 30%, because looking at how the situation is, we think that if we increase the fares by that margin, it will support us a little bit for us to keep on running our transport. So our expectation tomorrow is that surely we are expecting the Transport Ministry to, come into an agreement with us so that we can be able to increase our transport fares for our members or for our drivers to also, have some peace of mind to continue serving the nation.
So tomorrow you want a 30% increase in fares?
Yes, because as I said earlier on, when we proposed the 20% first, by then the fuel price has not gone up to this time. Even now, as I'm speaking now, diesel now is being sold for 14 cedis, 80 pesos, and petrol is being sold for 14 cedis, 90 pesos. So we don't even know what will happen in the next pricing window. So that is what we are looking up to.
Okay, and ahead of tomorrow, some of your drivers have been charging the unapproved fares. We've seen the statement from the Transport Ministry already. Before tomorrow, have you managed to keep your drivers in check with staying true to the old fares, or you've seen some deviations?
Yes, if I'll hear you clearly, you were talking about some drivers.
The drivers charging unapproved fares.
Charging new fares. Is that correct?
Yes, charging unapproved fares. Yes.
Yes. It came to our notice. That is why the leadership of GPRTU, together with the GRTCC, came up with a release that the drivers should hold on. I understand them perfectly that looking at situations are now, there is the need to increase transport fares. But since we all have the procedure that we use, we can't just, came up with an increment without having a negotiation or agreement with the transport ministry. That is why the leadership of GPRT and the GRTCC came up with a release that the drivers should hold on till our meeting tomorrow. Then whatever will come up, then we'll also let them know.
Okay, thank you very much. And that there is Mr. Samoa looking ahead to tomorrow, a very important day. As I explained, when the fares go up, it tends to affect every single thing else. And joining me right now for a conversation in the studio is Abbas Ibrahim, who is the head of Economic Regulation, National Petroleum Authority. Abbas, long time no see. Great to have you join us. There's a lot on your plate, and I hope that you can give us some clarity, help us walk through what is happening, why we're seeing prices of LPG, etc., going up. Gabriel Kumi is the Vice President of the LPG Marketing Association and joins us in the studio. We'll be joined by Nana Moisi, as Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security, pretty shortly. Abbas, can you please explain this $80 per metric ton that has been put on LPG? Well, where's that from?
Okay, so I think you rightly described what it is for. It is the bottling plant margin and the cylinder investment margin. Okay,
what does that do? What is it margin? Does it go to private sector player, or you want to boost cylinder manufacturing? What does it explain that?
So I think you rightly spoke about the cylinder recirculation model, which we started talking about this somewhere 2017, working together with the industry to introduce this model. Now, as part of the model, we developed the value chain. I remember when the committee started, I was on the same committee with Gabi, the president, commercial subcommittee. We developed the structure for the value chain. To run the cylinder recirculation model, you need new players in the industry. So bottling plants were required to run the model. And under the cylinder recirculation model, as you know, consumers are not going to own cylinders anymore. So cylinders are going to be more or less given out. Consumers buy, you just pay for the LPG, the contents of the LPG cylinder, you don't pay for it because you don't own the cylinder anymore. You just come and do the exchange. So this new value chain of the introduction of a bottling plant and also the ownership of cylinders and maintenance of cylinders require that there has to be, as you know, with the price formula that we have a policy called the full cost recovery of investment. Under this policy, any investor in the industry requires margins to cover their cost of doing business, to continue to do their business. So if you look at the BDC side, when their price build up, there's room for them to have margins to cover their cost of doing business. When it comes to the OMCs and the LPGMCs, if you see the price build up, there's a line item for marketers and dealers margin. So this also helps them to cover their cost to do business. So with the introduction of the bottling plant and the purchase of and maintenance of cylinders, that same policy applies, and therefore there's a need to have a margin to pay for the construction of a bottling plant, operating a bottling plant.
It's the private man's headache.
But BDCs are private, LPGMCs are private. The policy requires that there's a margin in the price build-up to be able to pay for that. So the only difference here is that when it comes to the marketers, the LPG marketers, their margin is deregulated, so they determine their margin. When it comes to the BDCs, their margin, they deregulated, so you have different margins coming from them. With the bottling plant margin, because CRM is actually a new policy. Originally, I'm sure Gabi will remember.
So the $80, part of the, as I broke down, will go to the private investor who has opened the factory to bottle.
So I think you give the breakdown. Okay. $44 is the bottling plant margin, and $36.
So if you have a bottling plant, that will come to you.
Yes, so that goes to, just like there's a marketer's margin in the price of that goes to the oil marketing company when they sell. So the 16 or let me say 15 cedis per kg that you see, you mentioned in the price build-up. If you look at the average price of LPG today on the market, most of the marketers have their margins a little above 1 CD per kg in the formula. And so that goes to them to cater for the cost of building an LPG station, running an LPG station, because there's cost that you incur. You invested and you have to recover your cost of investment. So they're always allowed to have that margin in the formula. But for the bottling plant margin, because it's a new policy that we are starting, the original concept, like I was saying, if Gabi remember, the original concept was that we leave it deregulated as well, because all margins in the industry are deregulated. We don't regulate them. We realized that in negotiating with the bottling plants, the margins they wanted to charge would have been quite higher than what we are seeing today. So we had to more or less start with regulating it and bringing it down, because each of the bottling plants, per the analysis, had higher margins than we have, including the cylinder, way more than the $80 per metric ton combined. So we had to cap it and then regulate their margins until this policy is running properly before it can be deregulated, and then they're allowed to set their own margins just like we have the marketers doing today.
Gabriel, so what's the issue with this from the point of view of the LPG marketers?
Yes. I don't know why Abbas keep drawing me into his but that's fine. He's my little brother, so it's fine. I mean, like he rightly said, first of all, the marketer's margin is not determined by MPA because that is deregulated. So we set our own margins, and it's in our price build-up. So one would have expected that if you want somebody to also come in as a bottler and you want to give him a margin, you give that margin directly to that bottling plant or that members of that chain in that group to also factor that into their price build-up. But in this case, we are made to, MPA has created an account that this amount is going to be deposited in. We don't know how long we are going to, first of all, we don't even know how much we need to be able to roll this out. We don't know that. Secondly, we don't know how long we are going to be paying this debt. And look, about a month ago, he called me, and I went into a meeting, an informal meeting with his boss, Perry. And they made mention of this. But at that meeting, I told them that, look, we shouldn't do anything to increase the price of LPG because already the consumption of LPG is on the decline. And he assured me that, we are even working with the ministry, the Ministry of Finance, the new minister, to try and see how we can even take off the taxes from LPG. So my mind was that, okay, we were going to, even if we want to factor in all these things, we are going to work at reducing the taxes already existing on the product. But that was not done. 2 weeks after, all that we heard was that $80 per ton has been slapped on the product. And that has really, really, really shot up the pump price of LPG.
You're already reflecting this at the pump?
It's reflecting on our sales. This morning, our research team tried to put together the consumption for the first half of April.
Because you began this on the 1st of April.
Exactly, and the figures we are getting is alarming. It's alarming. And like I always say, this is a product government intentionally wants to promote. I mean, at least according to government, that is what he wants to do. But government actions are not in sync.
Do you accept this explanation that margins are a standard practice in your business? And so if the guy is coming in to set up and is bottling, he deserves that margin, and that's why this has been introduced.
Perfect. We have our margins. So allow the guy, it's investment. Let the guy come in and do his investment and then factor in his margin. Allow the forces of demand and supply market forces to be at play. Don't be the one collecting money and giving to, creating a fund, depositing money in there, and using that money to support private investors. We think that is not the way to go.
He has a point, as you know.
So I think it's important that we clarify. So I think Gabi saying that we're collecting money and giving it to them is not correct. It's not correct in the sense that, like I said, the bottling plant margin and the cylinder investment margin of $80, there are two figures in there. The $44 is going to be part of the bottling plant company's price. So the bottling plant companies are going to fill and then sell to the LPG marketing companies. So the price at which they will sell to the LPG marketing companies will have the $44, which is their margin. So that will be in their price. We are not going to collect and give back to them. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the cylinder purchase and injection as part of the CRM, after several engagements, it was clear that because the cylinders are not going to be owned by the bottling plant, this is more like a gas fund has been created. This gas fund is basically to ensure that the injection of cylinders is financed from this gas fund. So the $36, which I mentioned, is a cylinder investment margin, goes into that account. So as Gabi said, there's an account that's the gas account, the gas fund, which will be the money to be collected into them. That's the cylinder investment margin. Now, because it's $80 per metric ton imposed on the price of LPG, I think like Gabi rightly said, when you take the price of LPG and this $80 is imposed, not all the LPG goes to the bottling plant. So for the importers who are selling the LPG and this $80 is part of their price, remember that this $80 has gone to Parliament. The justification has been made for why it is important. And Parliament has passed this for it to be charged on the price of LPG. So every LPG imported and sold to the LPG marketing companies, whether for the regular retail or through the bottling plant, has this $80. So for those who are selling to the regular LPG companies and this $80 is part of their price, they pay into this fund. And this fund is what the main purpose for this fund is to purchase the cylinders for the injection for the cylinder.
Who is making the purchases? You, government?
Yeah, so what happens is that each bottling plant, there's a cylinder injection plant, a plan that will be made. Like we said, as the CRM is being rolled out, cylinders will be needed. Consumers will need cylinders. So we audit if a bottling plant says, I need 10,000 cylinders to inject as part of the plan. Remember, the bottling plant doesn't own the cylinder. It is the consumers, because consumers are ultimately paying for this. So basically, consumers now go to exchange LPG, they don't pay for the cylinder, they only pay for the cost of the LPG. So this gas fund basically pays for the, NPA manages a lot of funds. Like
so the NPA will take the monies from the fund and purchase cylinders?
Yes. So just like, for example, the way we manage the EPPF. The EPPF pays for the cost of transportation in the industry. So monies are collected from the price board up into the EPPF fund, and this is what pays for the distribution of petroleum products across the country. A similar thing has been created for the purchase of the cylinders for the injection into the CRM policy. So basically, that's how it operates. So it is not money being collected and we paying back to the bottling plants. When they sell, their price that they sell to the LPG marketing companies, the $44 that's part, is their margin, and it is retained with them. Okay. So basically, that's what it is.
Yes. I think, Abbas, we have visited, as part of the CRM, we have visited a lot of countries. I haven't seen any country that's what he's describing is being practiced. If you go to all the countries that we visited, that's really is operating CRM. The bottles are either owned by the marketers. They go to the market.
Such as yourselves?
Yes, such as myself. Okay. Some of them are also owned by the bottling plants. They go to the market, source their own funding, procure their own bottle, because at the end of the day, whatever profit that comes out of this operation of the bottling plants is going to go to them. So why should the Ghanaian taxpayer fund those bottles? That's what we don't get. Why should the Ghanaian taxpayer fund those, bottling plants? For these BDCs to operate these bottling plants, to use these bottles that has been purchased by taxes of the ordinary Ghanaian, to be used for these private investors, and they operate these plants and use these bottles and market LPG and put profit in their pocket. That doesn't make sense to us. Allow them. Open up the market. Come up with all your regulatory whatever. Those who find the market attractive will go to the bank and take loans and invest in their bottling plants, invest in their bottles, and make money for themselves.
But if you do that, won't you price it into the cost?
Obviously.
Of LPG that you sell to me?
It will be priced into the cost. But then there's going to also be a lot of competition. So they cannot come up with any outrageous price. Otherwise, they'll be kicked out of the market. Mind you, the existing system is still working. The bottling plants, in fact, the last time I met them, they said, okay, initially they were even thinking about a certain number of years for us to fade out. Now they are not going to even put any year on it. They are going to allow the bottling plants to also come in and compete like any other market, which is good. So if you are funding these bottling plants, you are funding these BDCs with my money. But we the stations we put there, NPA never funded anything. All these 800 stations in Ghana were put together by private individuals. Individual Ghanaians did that without no direct support of government. So why do we have to pamper anybody who wants to come to the space?
So what you're saying is that MPA, that if I want to set up a bottling company, you give me money to manufacture the bottle.
That's very untrue. We have 4 bottling plants already constructed in the country. 1 in Kumasi, 3 in Tema.
These are private.
No money has been given to them to construct.
But you're going to pay them for the cylinders that will manufacture under this policy.
I would like to start from where Gabi ended. Like I said, the price board has margins to cover all the investment that are made. Before July 2015, when we deregulated the industry and now allowed them to determine their own margin. So like you asked previously, yes, you would, even if you set your own margin, it's still part of the price. You pass it on to the consumer. Before we deregulated in July 2015, we were setting the margins for them, approving it. Was that we giving money or pampering the industry? Because we are approving the margins.
You're not collecting the money for them, right?
So basically, no, but we put the price in there, and then it goes. Like I said, we don't collect the money for the bottling plant company. The cylinders.
Yeah. But we're talking about that we've isolated.
So I think
for the cylinder manufacturing companies, you collect for them.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. So they don't. I mentioned earlier, they don't own the cylinders. You see, Gabi made an example of other countries, and other countries have different models when it comes to pricing of petroleum products and how the systems work. So we have to put countries into context. When you go to other countries, for example, they don't have what we have called the UPPF. So if you go to Kenya, for example...
What is UPPF?
The Unified Petroleum Price Fund, and that's what ensures that in Ghana, the price of petrol in Tema is the same as the price of petrol in Wa. Most countries don't have this mechanism, but we have that in Ghana. So the fact that other countries don't have, it doesn't mean that it's bad. So every country operates in a certain context. We looked at our situation. See, we went to other countries to learn from them, and then you use your experience from them to determine how you go about yours. We realized that if you should leave this in the hands of the private company, for example, I mentioned earlier, the numbers they were coming up with were too high. It was going to make the product more expensive.
No, but it's a competitive market. Exactly. The law of demand and supply will weed out those who are charging exorbitant. That is basically the basic definition of a functioning capitalist economy.
I think you see it's not an industry that's just unregulated. It's a deregulated, pricing deregulated, but there are mechanisms to it. So if you say that it's deregulated, when we have a law that has allowed us to regulate the margin for the bottling plant. Until that is taken away, we have been able to, like I said, we've been able to bring the cost down. Now, Gabi made a point earlier that adding the $80 adds to the price of LPG. That is true. And I think through a lot of our engagements last year, we mentioned that just adding $80 to the price as it is makes the price expensive. So what MP was going to be very innovative in ways to make sure that this does not happen. So what did we do? In January this year, we introduced the LPG tender policy. Previously, you have different companies importing LPG on their own in smaller quantities. And because they do this, they didn't have the economies of scale, advantage of economies of scale. So you could have most of them importing between $70, paying premiums of between $70 and $100 to the suppliers in addition to the world market price to land the product here in Ghana. We thought that if we should consolidate the cost of LPG, the quantities of LPG we need in the country.
And buy in bulk.
It reduces the price. And we also put it to competitive tender. We did this in January, and it dropped the price from around $100 to $30 per metric ton. That's about $70 per metric ton savings. So this allows the introduction of the bottling plant margin because, like we said, there has to be a bottling plant margin because the value chain has introduced a player. And just like any other value chain in the industry, any player in the value chain, they have margins that covers their cost. So this what we did. So it's not as if we didn't do anything to ensure that this introduction of the bottling plant margin does not help to alleviate the pressure on the consumer.
But the data shows that consumption is dropping.
Yeah, and it's very good we work with data.
Yeah.
So we have the data I have data here from the past 10 years of consumption of LPG.
Okay, what does it say?
So like Gabi said, in 2022, we saw a drop in the consumption of LPG. And this was because of what we remember in 2022 when the exchange rates increased significantly. We had world prices for petroleum products increasing significantly, not only LPG. Remember, diesel petrol was about 20 cedis per liter. So we had a significant increase in the price of LPG in 2022. And because of this, the consumption dropped. Now in 2023, the consumption has gone back rising. And we have had years before CRM. We have had years like in 2017 when the consumption of LPG dropped compared to the previous year. So apart from 2017 when there was a drop, there was 2014 also when there was a drop. This was not because of CRM. So consumption trends have a certain trend. It is not because of CRM, but we are very, very conscious of affordability of the product.
Yes.
And that's why I mentioned that MPA did innovative things to ensure that this introduction of the bottling plant
yes, we show that in 2023 is beginning to climb up.
Yes.
But the point is that do you expect that trend to continue?
So the whole policy of the CRM is to ensure that consumption rises.
Yeah.
How are we doing this? Now let's look at the advantages the CRM brings. Now, Gabi will confirm to you that if you are constructing a retail outlet just like they have today, it's very expensive. Now, most of them have already applied to construct the exchange point. The exchange point, all you need is the cage, a land that you have maybe concreted, and then you run the cylinder exchange. You don't spend as much as you would spend to build an exchange point. Today, almost all the LPG retail outlets are concentrated in the urban areas. If you look at our consumption of LPG in Ghana, most of the rural areas don't have LPG. My village, for example, in Pasa, before you get LPG, you have to drive all the way to Nkonta before you can get LPG. Nobody wants to construct an LPG bottling cylinder station there. But with the introduction of cylinder exchange, now Gabi can construct an exchange point in Pasa, which is way cheaper, And now those there, first of all, you don't even have to buy the cylinder. So now access of LPG has become very easy. So that's the whole objective, to ensure that we have access, availability, and then the price. Like I said, of course, if you make product available, you make the product accessible, and the price is not affordable, nobody will buy. Yeah. And that's how come we did the tender to bring down the cost. That has absorbed it.
But in spite of that tender, we've seen prices climb up.
But that's because whether you do the tender or not, or whether you introduce bottling plant margin or not, if your exchange rate is going up, if your world market price is going up, prices go up.
But you've added, but that's why when you added the $80, then that already factors and favorable. And then you put this on top, then climbs
I mentioned that we've done the LPG tender program. The first lot was delivered in March. So it has coincided with this introduction of the the bottling plant margin. So this is something that we've deliberately done to ensure that introduction of the bottling plant margin does not come at a time when we have prices as high as they were. We've been able to drop the price close to $70 per metric ton.
Yeah, but I haven't felt it in my pocket.
But that's what I'm saying. So the market
but I haven't felt it. This 70 you're saying is just a number.
But to make it look,
we've seen the prices go up.
But it's a fact that the price.
Yeah, but it's a fact that it costs drop. But I haven't seen it in my purchases.
But the point I'm making is if you hadn't brought that, if the world market price goes up or price go up or not, it will go up.
But fundamentally, you say your mitigating intervention was this, the competitive bidding and buying in bulk. Yeah. But that, as far as I'm a consumer, I haven't seen that reflect in my purchases.
But that is not because of the $80.
Yeah, so but of course, but $80 is going to add to the cost.
So are you ignoring the fact that the cost dropped by $70 through the tender?
No, but that's the tender. I'm talking about by pump.
No, but the tender has dropped the price. So the cost from the BDC level has dropped by $70.
Okay, but Gabriel.
So you can't ignore that fact. If you ignore that fact, then you're not being honest.
Availability per se does not guarantee consumption. You can recirculate cylinders to every hamlet of this country. If you don't make it affordable to the people, you can never achieve any increment in consumption.
Which you have confirmed.
Hold on. And as practical practitioners that practice on the ground, we have witnessed this. We have constructed gas stations in certain parts of the country that we are not selling anything because the people are not able to afford. That is why consistently we have asked that let us all work to make LPG affordable. In fact, affordability is the number one consideration for us to be...
Not availability of cylinders.
Not availability. Even your travel, we go to the airport, we see all these designer shops. You go and lift one pen and it's $5,000. I lift it, I just turn it around and put it back. Because even my pocket money is not up to $5,000. How can I buy a pen at $5,000? So if you are not careful, we will just...
So for you, price is everything?
The price is everything.
That's something MP agrees to.
Hold it.
So why are they introducing $80 on that?
So that's why I said we didn't just, the value chain introduced a bottling plant. So if you just leave it like that, it means the consumers will pay $80 more without doing nothing. So MP had to be innovative to bring in the tender to ensure that...
You keep referring to the tender. No, but you see, but the tender hasn't led to me. See, I haven't seen a reduction in the cost I pay for my LPG.
Gabi, are you ignoring the fact that the tender dropped the price?
When you decided to do the tender, we went out there to congratulate you for that.
So that has dropped the price.
You don't take one foot forward and then take two foot back.
So Evans, if you remember last year,
when let me finish your country.
Let me talk. You are my little brother. Let me talk to you. You see, Evans, we appreciate certain things that MPA has done, and like I said, when they introduced this tender, we all went out there thinking that look, this is a very good move that will lower prices. But like you rightly said, it has never affected the pump price of LPG, or rather, the pump price keep moving up. Now you have introduced a tender. Allow consumers to enjoy that windfall from your tender. You don't replace it with a bottling plant margin that has really rather shot up the prices to the roof. Look, this is a commodity. Abbas knows. He's in charge of pricing. Countries like La Côte d'Ivoire are subsidizing LPG. This is a serious country. When I talked to a colleague of mine there, he is even telling me that they have even written to the government to increase the subsidies on LPG. But we keep piling taxes on the LPG in Ghana.
Your fundamental demand is that they withdraw the $80.
We want the LPG. We know his bosses are very listening people. We want them to withdraw this $80 and find another means of making sure that this cylinder recirculation works. Look, the cylinder recirculation has not worked for the past 7 years because of some of these thinkings. For the past 7 years, they have tried it. We, as practical people on the ground, have given a lot of advice to MPA as to how we can move this thing forward. Look, take it or leave it. Cylinder recirculation has some advantages. But if we don't do things right and make sure it takes off, we wouldn't...
Would you withdraw it, though?
So, Gabi...
Because, you see, they are not the only organization complaining. Even the OMCs have also written.
Evans. They are the same association. LPG Market Association are part of the association.
We are not the same.
Companies. So
we are different. Withdraw that.
Association.
Withdraw that. We are not the same.
Association of oil marketing companies.
So you will withdraw it?
So let me explain. So you see, we explained from last year when we spoke. We have done a lot of engagements on CRM. And I remember one of the engagements we had in MPA with the media. You asked, with the introduction of these new players in the value chain, it means margins have to be created for them. How are you going to ensure that this introduction of the margin does not burden the consumer? And we mentioned that we are going to find ways to ensure that this does not happen, in the sense that what do we do to bring down the cost of LPG so that when the bottling plant margin comes, so the tender that I spoke about is the solution to ensure that when the bottling plant margin comes, so that it's not a standalone thing.
But you haven't addressed
it was a solution.
The failure of that intervention to reflect in reduced prices of the pumps.
This is just that. I mentioned that even if you did not have this $80 in the price, even if you did not do the tender, prices will go up when the world market price
That's
go
true.
up. And
Except that you have $80 on top of the price going up.
So my point is, if you look at the price of LPG from February, you can see LPG price have been going up until this window when they dropped.
Yeah. So with the 80, it will go up further.
I mentioned that we did a tender.
I know, you've said that many times.
So you see, maybe we are not getting it.
Yeah, so
the tender was a solution to ensure that when the 8, so to say that, to say that we did a tender and then to make it look like...
But you did a tender. You were expecting the price of buy the pumps to go down.
So you see, it's more like he said, it's like we've done the tender and then brought in the $80. But that's basically what we explained that was going to be done. We said we are going to do the tender to ensure that when the 80 comes...
for you to put the $80?
That's what we explained. Like I said,
the question was... that was intentional.
The question was, if you bring in $80, it immediately increases the price of LPG. So what are you going to do? And we answered that.
Yeah, but you just said it. You brought the $80 and immediately increased the thing.
You guys were out there saying you are going to reduce the price of LPG by the
solution to ensure that bringing the $80 does not lead to the price increment was to... If you have dropped the price by $70...
So would you say that intervention has achieved its purpose, considering that the $80 have still...
The other part which we have to talk about is, now, this $80 has come. It's a fixed cost in the price build-up of LPG. Now, he knows very well that their margins, they change them every now and then. The market, the BDCs also have a control of their margins. So now, doing this, it's up to MPA now to ensure that this tender we've done, which has brought down the price, are the BDCs passing it on to them? Is it reflecting the price? And we have to do that job.
That's the question I'm asking you. What's going to happen to ensure that it's passed on?
It just started. So we have to now analyze the price and make sure that with the introduction of the tender and the $80 that has been added, have the BDCs passed on this reduction?
What are you going to do to ensure that it's passed on?
We will ensure that you didn't increase your margin just because. Now, the good thing that we've done is that previously LPGMs would submit what they call indicative prices to us. The indicative price was not the actual price. BDCs will also submit indicative prices, not actual prices. Now, the new pricing guidelines mandates them to submit actual prices. So if you have been submitting actual price, we know what your margins are. In fact, when we analyze their price, we have an idea of where their margins are. We have an idea of where the BDC margins are. So if you have done a tender and it's supposed to lead to a drop in the price, and we know that you are adding $80, and it's supposed, let's say if your premium is supposed to drop from 200 to 150, and you didn't pass it on through our price analysis, we know that you didn't pass it on.
You've seen that they're not. What is the MPA going to do about it?
No, so MPA is going to ensure that.
How?
You see, we analyze prices. Remember, the market is not deregulated. It's regulated, but not completely.
Yeah, but you haven't answered the question. So how are you going to ensure that it's passed on?
We regulate them. There have been times, Gabi, you remember, there have been times when we thought, even the deregulated margin, we realized that the BDC premiums were too high for LPG.
And what do you do?
We call the BDCs. Remember, the regulator can question you, interrogate your price, and if you think the price is not in accordance with the pricing formula, we question you. So that's what we are doing. We interrogate your price and
very quickly,
take action.
Will this $80, would it be imposed in perpetuity?
So the $80, have a timeline for it? Today, have we withdrawn marketers' margin because it is perpetuity. Once the the player is in the industry. It has to be there.
Okay, so
marketers margin has not been withdrawn.
Okay. And I need to ask you, let's expand the conversation quickly because I want to bring Nana Amoisi into it. Because this is not the only one going up in terms of fuels for us.
Yes, so that's the point
Petrol
I'm
is going up. We've seen it today. It's gone up again. Petrol is more expensive now than diesel. What's the MPA's own projections? You're going to see further increases in the price of petrol.
I'm even happy you brought in petrol.
Yeah.
No new tax has been imposed on petrol.
Yeah,
but it's going up. So that's a context.
No, but that is why this conversation about LPG is important.
Exactly.
Because so, even without your burden of $80, we're going to cry.
Right. But we introduced something to you. But you're ignoring the fact that MPA did a tender to drop the price.
Okay, you keep going.
Exactly, because it's important. It's an important point. If you ignore that, then you are making it look as if...
But address quickly for me what your projection is on petrol and diesel, very quickly.
I think I'm happy you mentioned when you were making showing the slides about the world market price and the exchange rate. In a deregulated market, MPA does not regulate the prices. We don't tell the marketers that set your price as so and so. It's influenced by these key factors: the world market price, the exchange rate, and then their margins that they set. Taxes are also part of the price. They know very well that taxes on petrol have not been increased, but petrol prices are going up because of the world market price. Now, what are we doing? You remember that the world we have a lot of geopolitical issues happening now. Once these things are happening, they will affect our price here in Ghana. MPA, for example, does not control the taxes. So I heard him talk about the taxes. The taxes, once they are passed by Parliament, the price buildup formula has to reflect them. So as MPA, our projection from what we are seeing now shows that the price on the world market are going up. Exchange rate is also not doing well. So if you look at the projections, it means prices are going to go up. Unfortunately for us in Ghana, if the exchange rate goes up, it even compounds the issues. And that's where we are at the moment. So from the look of things, and what MPA even does for consumers to know that price will go up. We don't hide this. Okay. We publish what we call the daily price indicators. That shows
the look of things you're going to say you expect
prices are still rising because just over the weekend we all know the attacks, the fight between Iran and Israel. And globally, is an issue that everyone is battling.
So in other words, if you're a consumer tonight, you should expect that this trend will continue. This trend of increasing prices will continue for petrol, for diesel, for all the fuels.
Yeah, in fact, all the petroleum products come from crude oil. So once the crude oil price is going up, it affects all of them. So if you look at
how high will it get before it drops? I know MPA, you do your projections. How high do you expect this to go?
Unfortunately, we can't tell because no one can tell what the price of petrol tomorrow will be on the world market. I can't tell.
But you can make projections.
We actually don't project.
Okay, but let me ask you: it's been suggested that it possibly may hit up to 17 CD petrol, for example, 17 CD a litre. Possible?
You see, if last year, if you asked me whether to reach 14, when it wasn't 14. If the world market price goes up and if the exchange will depreciate, it will reach there. Okay. But as to when, nobody can tell what the price of crude oil is tomorrow. Okay. So that's why we publish the daily price indicator. So every day we update this. So at least you can have information on where it is going to. So once we give you this information, then you'll be able to tell whether price will go up or not. Okay,
quickly, I want to bring Nana Amoisi, who has been on Zoom with us. Nana, so you've heard there. So MPA says expect the price increases to continue with it because of whatever is happening around the world. What's your own take of this? Can government do anything, or should it, to cushion us all? LPG is going up, petrol is going up, diesel is going up, everything will go up from the MPA's point of view.
Thanks for having me, Evans. Good evening to you, to your viewers. The MPA must be in a position to do projections. What is the use of the numerous data they collect on the industry? Every day, every minute, they have, or they call all the BDCs, OMC, or the storage points to give them the stock levels, to give them laycans, to give them all the importation, arrangements. They also observe from the Standard & Poor's platform world market prices. If you have all this data and you cannot do projection, then why do you take data? You should be in a position to tell. Even we are in winter, just gone past winter, going into summer. From IESDEX, we know that winter grade of fuel are different from summer grade of fuel. As we go into summer, some refineries may shut down to prepare themselves to produce summer fuels. And so stock levels on the world market will drop. When they drop, what happens is that international price will go up. And so if you're an MPA and you can...
Oh, we may have lost him there. But yes.
Cannot project an active MPA.
Oh, he's back, yes.
What's going to happen?
Yes, please proceed, Nana. We lost you briefly, but you're back. Yes.
Good. So what we see from our index is that within the next 6 weeks, price of international price will go up. And so we'll be hit domestically by the same, rise or similar of prices. We also know that the cedi is not performing well against the dollar, the importing currency. That forex exposure will also hit us domestically. We know that's one as well. We also know very well that governments may not be willing to reduce taxes and levies on fuel, and so we are not expecting any reduction in the coming 6 weeks. And so we can project that prices of gasoline, LPG, and gas oil and other derivatives may not drop in the next 6 weeks. That we can tell. The other thing we see is that it might potentially rather increase.
How high do you think it will get? I mean, MP actually agrees with you that he expects increases too. But how high do you think it will get before it maybe begin to drop?
We got to 20 cedis per liter for diesel and petrol. Don't be surprised to see anything around 18 cedis per liter for diesel and petrol in the next 6 weeks.
Wow.
You see, he was talking about the tender reducing the cost of LPG. Yes, it reduced it by $70, but they've added $80. So effectively, they've added $10
more.
$10 more. So the impression they gave us was that, yes, we are doing this tender because we want prices of LPG to go down.
They didn't only take it back, they added more.
They added more. So what are we doing? We keep... Evans, I think... It's important that they withdraw this levy.
But what are you going to do now, though? If he's told you it's not going to happen, withdrawal won't happen.
I'm sure. I don't know if Abbas has that final say to say that it won't happen.
Okay.
But I think.
Have you been called for a meeting yet on this?
Oh, not yet. Not yet. We might not be called for any meeting, but we are giving ourselves some timelines.
What can you really do, though?
Oh well. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do. I mean, there is no justification for this. I mean, Abbas has not convinced me that $80 has to be there. Okay. It has to go. If government really wants to do cylinder recirculation, it should find other ways to do this than to impose this high. That tax is the highest tax ever to impose on any petroleum product in Ghana.
Okay.
So we can't accept it.
We'll wrap up now, but once you're charging us for this, you better get the cylinder recirculation model up and running, and I want to see the cylinders next to my house.
So I think it's a good thing, I think Gabby mentioned. Cylinder recirculation model has a lot of advantages. But let me make a correction. It is not a tax. It's a margin for the bottling plants.
It's a tax.
Just like the...
So far as I will pay for it.
Okay, then maybe Gabby will accept that his margin is also a tax. Because it's part of the price.
What is dangerous about this tax?
You see, but today, Gabby's margin...
That means that when the cedi weakens, this is going to go up.
Gabby's margin is more than 1 cedi per liter.
Yeah, but why is it not in cedis? Why is it not?
Actually, it's part of the supplies premium. The product is... So but Gabby's margin is more than what he's talking about. The $80 is talking about.
How much is it?
The facts are there to show.
What is the fact? Tell me. Our margin is 50 pesos.
It is not correct.
Okay.
It's correct.
By the way, Abbas, thank you.
We have data, it's not correct.
Thank you.
I have data.
Gabriel, thank you very much. Nana Moisi, I'm grateful that you joined us. On Thursday, you want to join us for that big national conversation on guaranteeing reliable power supply. It's going to be right here. We're bringing all the stakeholders on this table to discuss the erratic power supply and find real solutions to it. Stay with us and join us then.